What the fuck is going on with Nicki Minaj today, and why is she lying to us? Allegedly. So if you did not know, early this morning, Nicki Minaj took to Instagram to talk about how there were some fraudulent charges made to her Amex card, which is hilarious when you remember that Cardi B called this out a couple weeks ago. Now, Nicki Minaj was saying that it was 3 different people in a span of 2 months, but she specifically did say that it was her Amex that was being used. And in Cardi B's tweet, when they were going back and forth about their kids, she mentioned that Kenneth is the one that is allegedly using Nicki's card without her permission.
Nicki girl, that man is expensive and it's costing you a lot of money. Because the way that Nicki's life was going, the last thing she needed to be was homeless.
Nicki Minaj really wakes up every day choosing chaos because somehow things just keep getting worse after that so-called humiliation ritual. At AmFest with Erica Kirk, she really thought she was about to drag Don Lemon, only to end up embarrassing herself again. The real talk that leaked right after made it clear this whole situation isn't even about Don Lemon. It's all about the money, allegedly. Word is, Nicki's been spiraling and snapping at everybody because those checks aren't hitting like they used to. And what's wild is, a big reason behind that might be her decision to marry and stand firm behind her husband, who's a registered offender.
But all I need to tell you guys out there is that men can be very expensive if you allow their antics to get out of control. Like, he costed her a lawsuit that she didn't actually have to be a part of. Think about that for a second. When the security guard was breaking up the argument between Nicki and one of the assistants at one of her shows, the women weren't actually physically fighting. And Nicki was actually getting ready to go on stage.
People say that choice cost her more than just public image. It nearly cost her the roof over her head. Reports say Nicki almost lost her home over a major lawsuit connected to Kenneth Petty, and now it seems like the fallout just won't stop.
Nicki don't need to worry about Don. She need to be with damn Don Lemon. Nicki Minaj needs to be worried about Chris Hansen. That's what she needs to be worried about.
Nicki barely managed to keep her house. She had to cough up a whopping $500,000 just to save it. But instead of taking that as a wake-up call, she stayed online stirring things up like nothing happened. That's exactly why DL Hughley had to step in and remind her Nicki's got way bigger problems than Don Lemon. Like, hello? Her husband, who legally can't even be near a school or playground, is out here burning through the money she worked her whole career for. What's wild is that some of her fans were actually calling that settlement a win just because she didn't lose the house. But imagine having to drop $500,000 just because your man can't manage his own legal business. Kenneth gets in trouble and Nicki's the one footing the bill. That's straight up humiliating. And now, to make things even messier, she's cozying up with Erica Kirk and dipping into MAGA circles just to cover her husband's financial chaos. What a wild turn of events. It's straight up messy work. Watching someone like Nicki fumble her whole legacy like this feels desperate and honestly kind of sad. Still, DL Hughley isn't holding back. He's saying Nicki doesn't deserve any sympathy because she made her bed and chose to stand beside people who defend offenders.
DL Hughley calls out Nicki Minaj. You got DL Hughley calling out Nicki Minaj after Nicki made a post calling out Gavin Newsom, basically saying like, man, this is the man that's supporting transitioning kids and basically telling them, leave the kids alone, which I 100% agree with Nicki Minaj. Then you had DL Hughley responding saying Nicki Minaj shouldn't post anything about kids because her husband can't be within 1,000 feet of one of them. It ain't Gavin Newsom, it's Chris Hansen he should be worried about. You got some people agreeing with DL Hughley. My nigga, what does all that got to do with the statement she made?
That's a bold statement, but it's got folks talking loud. Now, let's catch up on this whole house drama. Back in 2024, Nicki got slapped with a default judgment for about $500,000, all tied to a messy lawsuit involving her husband, Kenneth Petty. And the story traces all the way back to a wild incident in 2019 while Nicki was on tour in Germany. Allegedly, she got into a heated exchange with a female security guard, and when things escalated, Kenneth stepped in, only to end up hitting the male guard who tried to break it up. That one moment spiraled into a legal nightmare that's still haunting them today. According to the lawsuit, the male security guard, Thomas Weidenmuller, stepped in to break up the fight, but things took a wild turn when Nicki allegedly told Kenneth to handle him. Thomas claims Kenneth came out of nowhere and sucker punched him, breaking his jaw in the process. That's when everything went completely off the rails. The lawsuit named both Nicki and Kenneth, but instead of facing it head on, they reportedly dipped out and ignored the whole thing. German authorities even issued an arrest warrant for Kenneth, yet the couple still left the country. Since neither of them showed up or responded to the court, the judge ruled against them automatically. No defense, no delay, just a full-blown loss. But it didn't stop there. Even after the judgment was entered, Nicki and Kenneth didn't pay a cent. So Thomas took it right back to court, asking the judge to enforce payment by going after Nicki's Hidden Hills mansion. He wanted that house sold to cover the debt. And get this, the judge was seriously considering it because there was enough equity in that property to make it happen. Things were getting dangerously close to home, literally. To satisfy the judgment, things were about to get real. But just one day before the court could move forward with the forced sale, Nicki suddenly came up with the cash and dropped the full $500,000, barely saving her mansion from being sold off. So no, this wasn't some big victory for Nicki. Sure, she kept her house, but the fact that she had to scrape that money together at the very last second, that's straight up embarrassing. Imagine having to cough up $500,000 for something you didn't even do. All because her husband, who's already a registered offender, allegedly couldn't control himself. That should have been a huge wake-up call for Nicki, a moment to really stop and think. But instead of taking that pause and dealing with her husband's mess, she flipped the energy somewhere else. Instead of reflection, Nicki turned her frustration towards journalist Don Lemon like he was the problem. That move had people side-eyeing her hard because it looked like she was dodging the real issue. Here's how it all went down. It started when Don Lemon covered a tense protest in Minnesota where demonstrators opposing ICE interrupted a church service mid-sermon. But here's the key detail. These protesters weren't just trying to cause chaos for no reason. It turned out that one of the church's pastors, David Easterwood, also worked as the acting director of ICE's St. Paul field office. So Don was simply there doing what journalists do, reporting live, breaking down what was happening on the ground, and giving context to the story. Everything was moving normally until Nicki jumped right into the situation without even checking what the protest was really about. Out of nowhere, she took the whole thing personally and went off online, dragging Don Lemon in public posts and throwing serious shade his way. The internet lit up instantly because people were stunned that she inserted herself so fast and came at him that hard without getting the facts first.
Have gathered over here. They're in the middle of the church. In the beginning of the church service, the pastor was speaking, and Nikema stood up and said her piece, and then the protesters surrounded her. But this is a clandestine mission. I think they found out according to them, this is according to Operation Pull-Up, that one of the pastors here is a member of ICE, and so
Nicki went all the way off. She even posted a picture of a Chucky doll and wrote in the caption, "Don Lemon sucking lemon is disgusting. How dare you? I want that thug in jail. He would never do that to any other religion. Lock him up." The post had everyone's jaws on the floor. It was clear she didn't even understand what was really going on. She just saw that it happened inside a church and instantly jumped on a moral high horse, acting like she was defending Christianity.
This is what I'll say to Nicki Minaj. I normally don't respond to things like this, but, F it, I'm going to do it this time. I think Nicki Minaj has made it very clear how she feels about African Americans in this country, or I don't think she's one of them, obviously. And she should, under Trump's rule, she should be deported because I don't think, reportedly, that she is a legal citizen here. She is undocumented. And so she has shown her disdain for African Americans. So why are you supporting her? Why are you buying her records? She's also supporting, I have lots of gay friends who love Nicki Minaj. Why are you supporting this homophobic, bigoted, ignorant?
But let's be honest, nobody's buying this sudden Defender of Faith act. Folks online started calling her out, saying she was doing the most for attention and trying to pull a MAGA-style move for sympathy points. Critics were quick to point out that, like many of those self-proclaimed Christian warriors, Nicki doesn't exactly live by what she preaches. Then Don Lemon clapped back fast. In a statement to TMZ, he said, "I'm not surprised. Nicki Minaj does not understand journalism and is weighing in on matters that are above her capacity. That response had social media in flames. Honestly, the image that would have fit Nicki's post better wasn't a Chucky doll, it was a pick-me doll. That would have told the story perfectly. And when Nicki said Don Lemon should be locked up, he didn't let that slide. Don fired back in the video, saying Nicki should focus on her own legal situation, claiming that Nicki Minaj needs to worry about her own legal status because she's actually an undocumented immigrant. Now, say what you want about Don Lemon, but Nicki's hypocrisy in this whole mess is just plain embarrassing. She's out here pointing fingers when her own situation isn't exactly spotless. For those who might not know, Nicki was born in Trinidad and Tobago, and she's even spoken publicly about being undocumented in the past. In fact, she mentioned it herself in a 2018 post when she criticized the Trump administration's family separation policy at the border. It's wild that she's now throwing around accusations while her own history tells a different story.
I heard that Nicki's mansion is about to be forcibly seized, no matter how hard she tries to hide it. Even I know now, I need to give her a piece of advice. Be smart when choosing men. She's throwing dirt at me online, claiming she won't release another album and is quitting music because she expects me to step in and save her. Let me make this clear. I don't owe her $200 million. The equity allocations were calculated strictly by the company, and suppressing her career does us no good since we originally had shared interests.
Nicki once wrote, "I came to this country as an illegal immigrant at 5 years old. I can't imagine the horror of being in a strange place and having my parents stripped away from me at the age of 5. This is so scary to me. Please stop. Can you try to imagine the terror and panic these kids feel right now?" Her words back then were emotional and heartfelt. But fast forward to now, and that same Nicki Minaj is out here cozying up to MAGA circles, calling Donald Trump handsome and dashing. People are looking at her sideways and asking the obvious, what happened? Did she really switch sides because she's broke and trying to get back in favor with a new crowd? Or did she just completely lose touch with reality? Meanwhile, voices like DL Hughley aren't shocked one bit. He's saying none of this should surprise anyone because Nicki's behavior lines up perfectly with the MAGA vibe, loud, defensive, and always playing the victim. The switch-up is wild, and fans can't stop talking about it. Let's be real, DL Hughley actually made a solid point here. Nicki's got multiple offenders in her own family, and she stood by them without hesitation. Not talking about Chris Hansen type of justice here. DL saying the loyalty is completely misplaced. And it's not just about her husband Kenneth either. Long before he ever came into the picture, Nicki publicly defended her brother Jelani, who ended up getting sentenced to 25 years to life for an absolutely horrifying crime involving his 11-year-old stepdaughter.
Nicki Minaj's brother and his attorneys thought he would be walking out of court a free man today. Jelani Mirage was convicted last November of repeatedly raping an 11-year-old girl.
The evidence in that case wasn't vague. It was backed by DNA proof that tied Jelani directly to the crime. Still, Nicki refused to distance herself from it. She even went as far as writing a letter to the judge asking for leniency, saying Jelani is the most patient, gentle, genuine, giving, selfless man. That move stunned a lot of people, especially because it showed she was willing to defend him even after the evidence was undeniable. It's moments like that that make critics question where her moral compass really stands. And that right there is where Nicki completely lost people's respect. Fans who once idolized her started questioning everything. How could she defend someone guilty of something awful like that? The backlash was brutal, but instead of taking accountability or reflecting, Nicki doubled down and acted like everyone else was the problem. She turned the whole thing into a "they're all out to get me" narrative, which only made the situation look worse. Then came the turning point. Her public image started slipping fast. Brand deals dried up. The industry started keeping its distance, and fans began calling her out for the constant contradictions. One minute she's posting about protecting women, and the next she's defending men with serious criminal records. It's a pattern that people can't ignore anymore. What's even wilder is how she keeps trying to mask all this drama by jumping into random political conversations or picking fights online. It's like every time the heat gets too real, she distracts the crowd with some new controversy. But at this point, the audience sees right through it. Nicki's empire is cracking, and no amount of tweets or flashy posts can hide that anymore. At this point, Nicki knows exactly what she's doing, so maybe this isn't a new version of her at all. Maybe this has been the real Nicki all along, and she's just not hiding it anymore. The mask is off, and the internet can see every move she makes now. But let's talk about it. Do you agree with DL Hughley that Nicki's got way bigger problems to deal with than worrying about Don Lemon? Because honestly, between the lawsuits, her husband's mess, and the career drama, she's got a lot more pressing things to focus on. And what about this sudden MAGA makeover? Do you think it's just desperation because the money's running thin and the hits aren't charting like before? Or is this really who she's been all along? I want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next deep dive. Your opinion keeps this conversation alive.